I can go anywhere I want. Continue on the, controversial things. It's disappointing, I think. Hello, travel lovers. Welcome to A Wanderlust for Life. I'm Jessica, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the culture shocks of going back to the United States after living in Amsterdam for 7 years. So you might call it reverse culture shock, maybe? So I've lived in Amsterdam, like I said, for 7 years. I grew up in the United States. I only lived in one state, and that is Virginia. So this is about my experience from the one place to the other. This is not about all of Europe, and this is not about all of the United States, just my personal experience. So just diving right in, I think the first obvious one, because I'm not from a city, I am from more like a rural town of, 20,000 people maybe, and is driving. You have to drive everywhere. In Amsterdam, we take our bikes or we take the bus, metro, tram, whatever. And going in between places, you either take the train most often or you take the plane if it's a little further away. So driving to go to the grocery store, to go to any spot where you need to grab anything, to go through a drive-through, things like that is constant. Like you're always doing it. And so then obviously you have to pay for gas and you have to be mindful of the gas tank, which sounds so stupid, but if you're not used to driving, you may not just consciously be like, oh, do I have enough gas? Do I need to fill up? So that would be the first thing, driving cars. Also, like going to one place for everything. So a one-stop shop, shall we say. So going to Walmart, going to Target, going to just kind of strip malls, shopping centers, malls, things like that is a very big difference than here. So we do have kind of like a little strip mall area in our neighborhood where you have the grocery store, you actually have two, a bakery, an eyeglass place, some takeaway, a butcher's, and a little like home store where you can buy like small home goods, which is really nice and handy. But again, you're on your bike, you're on the bus, you're not driving there ever because we don't have a car in Amsterdam. It's quite expensive to own a car here, but that's a different video. Also, I should point out the reverse culture shock. I got a lot of, we'll say, feedback in the comments when I did a video about culture shock in Amsterdam. So it is a term. It isn't like I'm like, oh, my system is so shocked. It's something being different than what you're used to. And the reverse culture shock means, for me, going back to where I grew up after living here for 7 years. And I haven't seen my family for 3. I have not flown to the US for 3 years. So hence culture shock, reverse culture shock. So along with the driving thing, things seeming closer because you can just hop in your car and drive. So in Amsterdam, you kind of have to plan things out, right? You're planning your route, whether it's the bus, the train, the metro, whatever, and you have to look at timetables and how often it goes, and then you have to maybe buy your tickets ahead of time or just tap in most cases. So just kind of having the freedom to just get in your car and go is so freeing. It's something that I think we do miss here, and that sense of freedom. So basically my, I guess, comparative situation that I can think of here is going to the train station. It is kind of cool going to the train station and being like, I've tapped in, I can go anywhere I want that the train goes to. That's kind of freeing, but it's not the same thing. Having family nearby, that's probably a pretty obvious one, but I mean, I've always been a very independent person. So when I went to college, it's not like I went home every weekend. I was an hour away, but I've always felt a strong sense of independence, that I am my own woman. I don't need anybody else. But being near family is a bit of a shock when you go back, because you're seeing them constantly, especially when you go back after so long and you're seeing everybody and you're making these trips and things are kind of moved around. So you do get to see your siblings and your parents and your grandparents and your friends. So it's weird because, you don't see them every day. And it's also weird because you kind of get jolted back into the constant communication on text or something like that, to where, I don't do that when I'm here because it's like a different lifestyle. So yeah, being in that constant connection and then having family lunches and family dinners, which was very nice. A big difference. Massive grocery stores. So you go to Martin's or Whole Foods or Kroger or IGA or whatever it is in your area. They're huge and there's just so much choice. Oh my gosh, like you have an entire wall of cereal. Or like we just were in Spain, in Mallorca. We went into a little grocery store and there's like 8 boxes of cereal. And it's funny because they'll still have your favorite kids cereal, which is just bonkers. But yeah, so massive grocery stores and the grocery stores where you can get everything in. So Walmart is a lot of times like half grocery store, half everything else, where you can buy your clothes, you can buy your Christmas tree, you can buy anything like that. So really the one-stop shop kind of scenario, which we don't really have here. When you go out to eat, the portions are so big that you need to have a doggy bag to take home. So here, they're usually more normal portions that you would actually eat in one sitting, but also the whole fast food thing. There's so many fast food restaurants in the United States that we just don't really have here. Like we do have the American ones like Burger King and McDonald's, and for some reason KFC is kind of a big thing here. Probably not as big of a thing as it is in Asia and specifically Japan. I don't know if you know that, but KFC is like a really big thing in Japan. They're not like the mainstay, whereas I feel like for a lot of Americans, fast food restaurants are kind of a normal thing. You go through Wendy's for your lunch, or you pop by Chick-fil-A to take dinner home. It's just not the same here. So just having kind of that amount of choice too, especially like maybe in one shopping area, is overwhelming to say the least. You probably knew this was coming, but the gun situation. It's not something that I think of constantly, but it is something that I think of like before I go back to the US, and just the understanding that like in my state, concealed carry is a very common thing. And basically what that means is somebody can get a permit and you can carry a gun with you. You don't have to show it. So basically there's open carry and concealed carry. It's different by state. The permits are different by state. It's all different by state. So if you're not American, you may not know that, but the whole gun situation, as we call it, or that I call it, is a state thing, not a federal thing. So that just means the laws are not the same in the entire United States. But in Virginia, there's lots of guns. It's quite upsetting to me. It is something that I think about, and I grew up, Columbine, if you don't know, was a mass shooting. It was one of the first, and I was in middle school. And so I kind of grew up thinking about where the exits are and how safe places were. And I had a job once where I was the first person in a university that people saw, and I was enclosed by glass, and I had to implement safety measures, some of which didn't get implemented, but some did. Because I had to seriously think about the fact that somebody could be very upset and come in with a weapon. And, it's just always kind of in the back of my mind. And it actually upsets me quite a bit that the mentality of America being this free country, yet a lot of people actually do live in fear. And I'm not gonna get into like the politics of it, but basically whether or not, whatever side you are on the Second Amendment and rights of gun owners and things like that, you can't deny the fact that there is, the potential for that, a higher potential for that than there is here in Amsterdam for something really bad to happen with a gun. And so yeah, it's just something that I worry about. Not consciously, not constantly, but it is something that I worry about before I go. And I think it's always really funny when people are like, oh, is it safe where you live? You live in a big city. Yeah, it really is. And I'd almost go as far to say it's safer than I was in the US, based on the crime statistics versus population and things like that. So yeah, I know some of you are gonna comment below telling me why I'm wrong and all that. This is my perception, and that is what I can share with you. This is my YouTube channel, and that is all I can tell you is my perception and how I see the world as far as what scares me. So there you go. And also, to continue on the, controversial things, is politics. Politics is really a big thing everywhere, of course. It's how the government is run, and it is very important. Politics in the US are just so divisive, and they have been for years. Politics has changed a lot in the last, I don't know how many years as well. I mean, I talked to my grandmother about it and just how different things were 50 years ago as far as what it meant to be one thing versus another and how people communicated about those things. And it's disappointing, I think, but you know, people do see politics as a representation of how people see the people around them. And I think that's where it gets really tricky as far as talking about politics. So yeah, that's hard. It's really sucky. The individualistic mindset. So I wrote this down, but it's kind of funny because, okay, so Americans in general are an individualistic society. And basically that means kind of all man for themselves. And that is a gross generalization. Yes, this is generalizations. But that's actually changing a lot here. Whereas the Netherlands used to be a lot more like what's best for the whole, it is getting a lot more individualistic. And I don't know what the cause of that is. If you do, please let me know down below, because I'm sure I have a lot of Dutch followers, and so if you can kind of give me a little bit of background on that, I'd be very curious. But it's come out in the last few years just how individualistic things are moving towards. But I like to think that still on a grand level that it is still, you know, we have high taxes, therefore we have good roads and we have good services and things like that. So yeah, I think that's it's just a big difference when I go back to the US, and it doesn't make me feel good. That's one of the reasons I think that I can say pretty positively that I moved, is because I like the idea of people kind of being in it together and having that community, that sense of community, where I do feel that here. I feel that in Amsterdam, I feel it in the Netherlands, I feel that in my own neighborhood. So yeah, those are kind of general things of reverse culture shock. Obviously, like, just different countries are very different, and when you get used to living in one, going back to another is gonna be a bit jarring. But like I said, I grew up with it, and it's easy to kind of slide back into those mentalities and those way of life, that way of life. But yeah, I just thought you might want to have that perspective. I was there for 10 days, and it's always good to visit. It's always nice to come back. So if you like this video, you want more expat life videos or immigrant life videos, please let me know down in the comments. I'm always curious what kind of videos you might like to see. So if you have ideas, let me know, and maybe you'll see it in a future video. Thank you so much for watching. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you aren't already. And of course, you can become a member of our Patreon if you want to support this channel in a different way. And I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.